You know that strange feeling of watching yourself in real time? Not just noticing what you do, but noticing how you sound, how you sit, how long you held eye contact, whether your laugh came out naturally, whether that silence felt normal. And while everyone else seems to be living, you feel like you are observing yourself from a few inches behind your own eyes. That is a hard way to exist. Because the part that hurts most is not even the awkwardness, it is the quiet fear underneath it. Why does being this aware make you feel less normal, not more? Highly self-aware people often look composed from the outside. They seem thoughtful, careful, insightful, sometimes even wise. But inside, that same awareness can feel like friction, a constant mental checking, a private commentary that never fully stops. You say something in a conversation, and part of your brain is still there with the group, but another part has already stepped outside the moment and started reviewing it. Did that sound forced? Did I say too much? Why did I react like that? Why can't I just be natural? This is where self-awareness stops feeling like insight and starts feeling like surveillance. And that shift changes more than mood. It changes identity. You begin to build a picture of yourself not from direct living, but from constant self-observation. Instead of feeling like a person, you feel like a project, something to monitor, something to correct, something that never fully gets to relax into being. This affects decisions in quiet ways. You overthink texts that other people send in seconds. You rehearse simple conversations before they happen. You notice tiny changes in people's tone and assign meaning to them. You can feel deeply connected to others, but still leave interactions with the sense that you performed instead of simply existed. Over time, this creates a painful split. There is the self who is living, and the self who is constantly evaluating the one who is living. Psychology has a name for parts of this pattern. It overlaps with self-monitoring, rumination, and self-discrepancy. Self-monitoring is your awareness of how you are coming across, useful in moderation, heavy when constant. Rumination is when the mind keeps circling the same material, not to solve it, but to stay near it. And self-discrepancy is the tension between who you are, who you think you should be, and who you think other people expect you to be. When these overlap, normal life starts to feel like a test you never studied for. And the worst part is that you may become very good at hiding it, which makes other people think you are fine, and makes you feel even more alone inside it. But this is the part that matters. You are not broken. What feels like, I can't be normal, is often a nervous system adaptation, not a character flaw, not weakness, an adaptation. Many highly self-aware people learned, often early, that paying close attention was useful. Maybe the environment around you was emotionally unpredictable. Maybe love felt conditional. Maybe you got rewarded for being mature, careful, perceptive, easy to manage. Maybe being observant helped you avoid embarrassment, conflict, rejection, or shame. So your brain became skilled at scanning, reading the room, reading yourself, predicting reactions. This is not dysfunction in the beginning. This is intelligence used for safety. Your mind learned that awareness reduces risk. The problem is that a strategy built for protection can keep running even when protection is no longer needed. And that is when adaptation starts to feel like identity. You do not just use self-awareness, you live inside it. Which raises a difficult question. If this helped you survive emotionally, why does it now make you feel unreal? That answer sits in the way the brain handles attention. Your brain is always trying to predict what matters. Attention is expensive, so the mind creates filters. It decides what deserves focus and what can stay in the background. When self-awareness becomes intense, the filter changes. Instead of attention flowing mostly outward into the moment, more of it gets pulled inward toward monitoring. That means fewer resources for spontaneity, less presence, less behavioral fluidity. In simple terms, you cannot fully dance while also standing off to the side judging every movement. Imagine your mind as a room with a spotlight. In healthy self-awareness, the spotlight moves. Sometimes it shines outward on the world, sometimes inward on your thoughts and feelings. But in hyper self-awareness, the spotlight gets stuck on you. Every gesture is brightly lit. Every awkward pause looks enormous. Every internal signal feels important. And because the brain treats whatever is in the spotlight as significant, you begin to experience your own normal human imperfections as evidence that something is wrong. That is one part of the mechanism. The other part is prediction. The brain is not just reacting to life, it is constantly forecasting it. If you have a history of embarrassment, criticism, rejection, or emotional unpredictability, your brain becomes more sensitive to possible social threat. So before a conversation even happens, your system may already be simulating outcomes. What will they think? How should I respond? What if I seem weird? That prediction creates tension in the body. Tension changes behavior. Behavior then feels unnatural. And that unnatural feeling becomes proof that you are not normal. This is the loop: prediction, self-monitoring, tension, disconnection, more monitoring. A simple way to understand this is to picture an internal security guard. The guard is not evil. The guard is trying to protect the building. But if the guard checks every door every 10 seconds, even during a peaceful afternoon, nobody inside can rest. That is what excessive self-awareness feels like. Not insight, overprotection. So what helps? Not stop thinking, not be confident, not just relax. Those are too vague, and the brain does not change through slogans. It changes through repeated experiences that teach it a new pattern. The first step is to reduce evaluation and increase observation. When you notice yourself analyzing your behavior, replace judgment with description. Instead of saying, "I'm being weird," say, "My chest is tight and I'm becoming self-conscious." This works because naming experience with simple language reduces emotional fusion. It gives the brain a little more regulation and a little less panic. You are no longer turning a temporary state into a fixed identity. Imagine you are sitting with coworkers at lunch and suddenly feel too aware of how quiet you are. Instead of spiraling into, "Why am I like this?" you silently say, "I'm tense, I'm monitoring myself, and I want to seem normal." That small shift changes everything. It turns the experience from who you are into what you are feeling. The second step is to give attention a job outside yourself. In social moments, deliberately anchor on something external: the other person's exact words, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your breathing, the emotion underneath someone's voice. This works because attention is limited. When it is fully consumed by self-monitoring, spontaneity drops. But when attention moves outward, even slightly, the brain has fewer resources left for constant self-evaluation. During a conversation, instead of tracking how your face looks or how your voice sounds, listen for one thing only. What is this person really feeling beneath their words? Now your mind has a task larger than performing yourself. The third step is to create small experiences of unedited behavior. Allow low-stakes imperfection in safe situations. Send the text without rereading it 6 times. Say the simple thing instead of the polished thing. Pause without filling every silence. This works because the brain updates not from theory, but from prediction error. When you expect imperfection to lead to rejection, and it does not, the nervous system slowly revises its model. You leave a voice note that sounds slightly imperfect. You expect to cringe later, but nothing collapses. The relationship stays intact. Your brain receives new data. Maybe natural is safer than constant control. The fourth step is to separate depth from distortion. Keep your insight, but question the assumption that more awareness always means more truth. Highly self-aware people often confuse intensity of perception with accuracy. But a mind under tension magnifies. It does not always clarify. After a social interaction, you may feel sure that your awkward pause changed everything. Then later, the other person texts you normally. The feeling was real. The conclusion was not. That distinction matters. You can trust your sensitivity without obeying every interpretation it produces. The fifth step is to build rhythms that make you less watchable to yourself. Spend time in activities where the self is not the main object. Walking, washing dishes, drawing, lifting weights, making tea, organizing a shelf, sitting with music without analyzing it. This works because repetitive sensory activity can reduce mental over-control. It helps the brain shift from abstract self-processing back into embodied presence. On a day when you feel unusually strange inside yourself, you stop trying to figure yourself out and go fold laundry slowly with music on. Nothing dramatic happens, but an hour later, you feel more human. Sometimes regulation is not revelation. Sometimes it is rhythm. If you remember only one thing, let it be this. Your problem is not that you are too deep. It is that too much of your depth has been recruited for self-surveillance. That is why the feeling of being abnormal can fade when you are absorbed in something real. A walk, a meaningful conversation, a task that uses your hands, a moment where attention leaves the mirror and returns to the world. Normal does not usually feel like a performance. It feels like reduced self-interference, like the spotlight softening, like the internal security guard finally sitting down for a while. So maybe the goal is not to become less aware. Maybe the goal is to become aware in a way that does not imprison you, to keep the gift but loosen the grip, to understand that your mind learned to watch closely for a reason, and to gently teach it that not every moment needs inspection. Because you were never meant to feel normal by perfecting yourself into it. You are meant to feel normal the way most living things do, by being here long enough, safely enough, that your mind stops treating your own existence like an emergency. And maybe that is the quiet truth underneath all of this. The part of you that keeps watching so closely is not trying to ruin your life. It is trying to protect it. It just never learned that being seen, being imperfect, being a little uncertain can still be safe. When that finally begins to sink in, you do not become a different person. You just become easier to live with. And sometimes, that is what healing sounds like. Not becoming more impressive, just becoming less afraid of being human.